let's take a look at our product strategies as you go through as well. One of the one that's the most common nowadays, you'll see a lot of it is total product. You're buying the product, but then it's not just the product, but it's the things that can come with the product, because you want to sit down and have a package to sell your customer as you go through. That being said, one common term is called bundling. A car with special wheels, tires, and warranties. Instead of buying your Mercedes-Benz, why don't you get an AMG? An AMG, you got a special drivetrain, special suspension as you go through, and also you have the name AMG on the back. And by the way, that title AMG kicks the cost of the car up another $30,000. You're already buying a high-end car, toss another $30,000. Hey, what's a couple dollars as you go through? So that being said, it's a special car as you go through, because it's not just a Mercedes, whatever class you're buying, but it's a Mercedes, boom, with an AMG package on it. iPhones have special apps as you go through. Maybe you can get an upper end as you go through, a little bit wider screen, or get some fast food, a burger with fries and the soda as you go through. Oh, but wait a minute. If you start paying attention to the profit margins, the profit margin for the burger itself is only so big. Fast food places make almost no money on the actual food that you eat. They make a massive amount of money on the soda and the beverage that you drink. By the time you're done, if you get you get a burger, you get a teeny tiny 5 to 12% profit margin on the burger, but then you get the soda. On top of the soda, you're paying $1.98 for a soda, and they cost them a whole 15 cents for the cup, the ice, and the soda, and even all the refills that you have, and they're making a huge profit margin. So when you start bundling things together, you may have an initial small profit margin. By the time you're all done and look at the total product sales as you go through and bundle it with other things, then all of a sudden now your profit margin is vastly larger as you go through. You kind of mix and match as you go through, but sometimes if you sell it right, the consumer will go through. Package, brand name as you go through, the accessories, the after sales, the company's image on it. You really have a lot of different things that you bring in when we talk about the total product value. And it's not just United States, this is worldwide as you go through. Industrial products, they require a lot less adaptation than consumer products. Consumer products, you have to go through and look on each one, look into 4 Ps as you go through and how it goes through, and then go through the social economic as you go through, the legal, all that on top of that. But really, a lot of industrial products, it really is a machine that does this thing over here. And it does the same thing in any language as you go through. So therefore, it's a lot easier to adapt. You don't have to sit down and pay attention to some of the finer points of marketing, because you're looking at going from business to business. B to B is the terminology. So business to business is much easier to market because of the fact that the advertising, you're looking for something that does something to generate a profit for somebody else, instead of somebody getting to use it because they want it as you go through. B2B tends to be more of a need-based aspect, and if you have the latest technology, they may need that to keep ahead of their competitors to go through. Adaptation, sometimes you have to sit down and meet legal requirements. We had a lot of that issue when we negotiated the United States with Mexico and Canada as you will go through. So the USMCA, we had to pay attention to the fact that a Mexican truck coming across the border had totally different safety standards in Mexico than it does United States. So therefore, part of the agreement was to sit down there and improve the overall requirements in the Mexican government on trucks for safety, so it reflects when it comes across the border, it's safer, and both countries are meeting the needs of the other one. As a result of that, Mexico went from down the list of trading partners to the #1 trading partner of the United States, because we negotiated a good deal where we met legal requirements and environmental requirements on both sides of the border. Sometimes requirements can cause trade barriers, but sometimes when you come to closure on them, it can actually generate a good, solid economic benefit. A lot of times we look on different aspects about sensitivity to the foreign environments you go through, industrial products and services. There's almost not a real deep sense of sensitivity, but when you come across looking the spectrum towards more and more consumer goods, from basic goods all the way to the high style and fashion, then you have to start paying attention to the niche market as you go through to make certain you're really hitting all the different the cylinders when you hit that really high end in the process. But industrial goods, the high end is actually production. It's clear, specific as you go through, and then you start getting into different factors of the culture involved. It really has a different aspect of it. B2Cs, business to consumers, B2C, as you go through, a lot of times it requires a lot of adaptation, except for luxury products. The product should sell right there as is. A lot of times the standard approach to market as you go through is come out with the high-end product as you go through. You're seeing a lot of that today with electric vehicles. They're coming out with the high-end electric vehicle, and then once they have that and once they have their toehold into that electric vehicle market, you'll be seeing over the next 10 years that they'll come out with more inexpensive versions of it, but carry a lot of the products as they keep on advancing the top line even higher than it was. You see the market entry, you start at the high end and then sit down and scale it down for the more lower end as you go through. But in the meantime, as you're ramping up production for the lower levels, you're kicking up the quality at the higher levels. It's a pretty standard way of operating in the international market as you go through. And then also the social and cultural values, they become more distinct in lower economic strata. That really helps in the aspect of adaptation as you go through. So it may not be necessary in the physical product, but in other essence, a lot of times it's about the packaging as you go through. Look at this over here. You can see Pizza Hut on the right-hand side, it's got an Arabic logo on it. It looks very similar, but here you have the Japanese on the other side. They're both selling pizza, both culturally diverse pizza. This is a business to consumer product as you go through, but you'll have a whole series of different flavors and tastes. Yes, it has dough. Yes, it has a sauce, but a lot of times in Japanese pizza don't use a tomato sauce, they use a different kind of sauce you go through. They also have a lot more variety in the aspect of seafoods than you'd ever find in an Arabic country as you go through. They have a different marketing campaign, different aspect, different tactics to how they go sell, a different spectrum in the economy that they're looking at as well as you go through. You go into Egypt, you'll see really Pizza Hut really is a high-end product, and a lot of young people flock to it as well. It could be because it's American, it could be because it's really good and totally different than their own cultural stuff. Same consumer product, different tactics, different packaging as you go through. Services, marketing is less complex because you're providing a service doing this thing as you go through. Then you may have to adapt a lot for legal requirements. Environmental is becoming a bigger force as you go through when you look at it. Different aspects of social cultural forces, how they reflect really the consumer preferences as you go through. Safety standards, food, pharmaceutical requirements, they're all legal parts. You have to pay close attention to it because you may be in the midst of a marketing campaign and have to yank everything back because it doesn't meet all the legal requirements and the obligations that you have. Economic forces, you may have inflation here and no inflation over here. Then in inflation over here, you're doing gangbusters on the profits, 20% profits, except you get 12% inflation. So how big is your profit over here? Maybe you only have an 8% profit increase over here, when over here you have a 7% profit, but almost no inflation at all. So which is bigger as you go through? The economic forces can sit there and affect the pricing, packaging, and also the overall viability of the market itself as you go through. B2C is very different from B2B as you go through. B2C, business to consumer, takes considerable adaptation, where really B2B takes more explanation rather than adaptation as you go through. Different strategies, sometimes the same product and service, but different strategy as you go through as to how you go through. Consumer products always have a more marketing intensive environment than you have B2B, where it's more of a product intensive environment. Take care.